This short presentation, Advertising Training Plan for 2021 on the regulation of clinical trials for animal medicines in the United Kingdom. My name's JP Schmidt and I have been with the VMD for about 8 years, working as a veterinary assessor and supporting applicants for veterinary clinical trial authorisations, better known as animal test certificates. As the planned training in 2021 will be targeted at those individuals conducting or planning to conduct in the future non-commercial studies, so those studies that will inform clinical practice. And we hope that we can demystify any common areas of misunderstanding, and we'll also plan to highlight and answer commonly asked questions. So some of these questions that we're commonly asked are highlighted in the bullet points here, and include whether a product that will be studied is a medicine, whether for the clinical trial of that medicine an animal test certificate is necessary, and should one be required, what type of application is necessary. Despite the seeming simplicity of these questions, answers are often quite nuanced with a range of considerations to take into account, but hopefully all will become clear during the training. So the term clinical trial has a range of potential meanings, but in the context of a veterinary clinical trial to support the data requirements for a marketing authorisation, it's a confirmatory field trial of a veterinary medicine. Such studies are conducted to assess a product's safety and or efficacy in the target animal population, and the products will be administered at the proposed dose, usually supported by preclinical studies, and administered via the proposed route of administration. As we can see from the images on this slide, the target populations can vary quite considerably from study to study. They could include aquatic species, terrestrial species. Here we have some of the UK's farm animal species or food producing species, but the considerations might be quite different for companion animal species, and some of the data requirements for those studies would also be different. So it's important to stress that these confirmatory studies will usually be conducted under normal conditions of animal husbandry or as part of normal veterinary practice. The recipients of medicines during these studies will be client-owned animals. Regulation of such studies is essential, and the appropriate instrument in the UK is the animal test certificate. So an ATC from the VMD, or an animal test certificate, will authorise the use of a veterinary medicine during a clinical trial, including outside of the terms of its marketing authorisation, the procurement and supply of that medicine, and the importation of that medicine or any medicine specified in the animal test certificate in accordance with the terms of that certificate. Produce from treated animals can enter the food chain if that's appropriate, and that will be assessed as part of the application. Procedures such as randomisation or blinding, the prospective enrolment of control animals in the study, and also the use of placebo products or perhaps sham treatments will be evaluated and assessed, and the animal test certificate will authorise those procedures to take place. Ultimately, the regulation of clinical trials provides safeguards. These are protections for animals to be enrolled in a study, but also safeguards for product users such as vets, pet owners or farmers, and also people coming into contact with treated animals. Consumer protections are important when food producing species are to be treated, ensuring the safety of food products derived from treated animals. And finally, environmental safeguards are needed to protect the environments into which medicines will be released, including our friend here, the dung beetle. There are two types of animal test certificates: an ATC, or a standard ATC, which is required to generate data in support of a marketing authorisation application. These ATCs are granted following a type A or B application, and then there's also an ATC-S, which is required for the authorisation of small-scale clinical trials of a medicine with an existing marketing authorisation for either human or veterinary use. These studies or clinical trials are conducted to inform clinical decision making and are granted following a Type S application. The VMD training next year will focus on these academic studies to inform clinical decision making, but would also cover regulation of clinical trials for academic studies of unauthorised products. So these are products without an existing UK marketing authorisation. Okay, that brings us to our final slide, and just wish to welcome you to make use of our training that will be made available next year and will be a virtual event. As we've said, it will cover frequently asked questions, but will also be relevant to both biological and pharmaceutical products, clinical trials, and will focus on demystifying clinical trials regulation for academic researchers. This follows other stakeholder engagement work we've undertaken, including recent letter in the Vet Record, which I have highlighted here. Thank you very much.
The VMD welcomes any questions that you might have. To ask your questions, please go to www.slido.com and use the event code 96607. Slido will be open for your questions until Friday the 20th of November. Responses will be published to your questions by Friday the 27th of November. If this presentation hasn't met your accessibility needs, please email director.support@vmd.gov.uk. Thank you.